Karl-Anthony Towns is currently out for the season with a torn meniscus. However, the Timberwolves haven't really missed a beat since. While this could be a short-term honeymoon period for players like Naz Reid, who stepped up in responsibility due to Cat's injury, this is making fans wonder if Bill Simmons' Ewing Theory can be applied to Karl-Anthony Towns. If you're unfamiliar with the Ewing Theory, here's a quick summary. A star athlete that receives a large amount of media attention and fan interest, but crucially never leads his teams to any meaningful success. If the player leaves their team or gets injured, the team then exceeds expectations without the player. This is, of course, named after Patrick Ewing, who by all means was a massive star. He did manage to lead his team to the finals once, but didn't really bring the Knicks consistently far in the playoffs over his career. The theory really gets its name from the '99 playoffs though, where Ewing tore his Achilles in the Eastern Conference Finals, yet his team went on to make the finals without him, and looked better than before. This brings us back to today. With Cat gone, is Anthony Edwards about to lead the T-Wolves farther than they've ever been in the playoffs as the solo star? Is Cat washed, or will his true value be proven to the team come playoff time if the Wolves fail? The Karl-Anthony Towns question has really only surfaced because Cat isn't the man on the Timberwolves anymore. After being drafted in 2015 to the T-Wolves, Towns came into the league NBA ready. He ended his rookie campaign showing extreme offensive talent, winning Rookie of the Year after averaging 18 points, 10 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks on top of that. He had decent post moves, had a good touch around the rim, could get by most big men, and could shoot from deep when needed. In other words, he was one of, if not the most versatile and talented young players the league had to offer. In fact, by late 2017, after his second season, NBA GMs did an anonymous poll where they rated Cat as the most desirable player in the NBA to build around. He beat out Giannis and even LeBron in voting due to him averaging 25 points and 12 rebounds while not missing a game in only his second season. This level of production is where Towns plateaued for a bit though, if we're being honest. After a season of not much improvement while being the main guy on the team, the T-Wolves traded for a true vet that could show Cat how to really win. Jimmy Butler got to the Timberwolves and the impact could be seen immediately. They actually made the playoffs that year and were looking pretty deadly, something you couldn't say about the Timberwolves teams of years prior. They lost pretty easily in the first round, but it was looking like Cat could finally take that leap and launch the T-Wolves into being a deep playoff threat year after year. As we all know though, Cat never took that leap. This contributed to a now disgruntled Jimmy Butler's infamous outbursts at the Timberwolves staff, including the "you need me" practice before he got traded. Once Jimmy was gone, it was back to mediocrity for the Timberwolves and Towns. As the years stacked up, Towns tried to reinvent himself as the Steph Curry of centers, shooting a lot more threes gradually than when he was younger. He found some success doing it, but really never got much better than that second-year peak he had already hit. It's not all Towns' fault though. Right in the middle of this reinvention of his game, tragedy struck more than once. COVID hit the world, the NBA, and especially Cat personally. Over the course of COVID, Towns tragically lost 8 family members. He also got into a vicious car crash around this time that could have killed him if he weren't so lucky. Given that he's not only back playing these days, he really hasn't even regressed that much. It's extremely impressive that he had the strength to not give up.
With everything going on in Cat's life, it's no surprise that he decided to sit out for the remainder of that shortened season, as the Timberwolves record made them ineligible for the invite to that improvised season conclusion in the bubble down in Florida. The Timberwolves finished off that season with the 3rd worst record in the league, which actually ended up landing them the 1st overall pick in the upcoming 2020 draft. This was a massive opportunity for a franchise that had only made the playoffs one single time since taking Karl-Anthony Towns the last time they were awarded the 1st overall pick. And with the very messy departure of Jimmy Butler, it was time to hit the refresh button. The president of basketball operations for the Timberwolves stated that landing the 1st overall pick was a significant step in their journey as they looked to build around Cat and D'Angelo Russell, selling the team's youth as a major asset. According to the front office, it was seen as an advantage for this team to be able to grow together. But once their future 1st overall pick would land on the team, all of their plans would go right out the window. The 2020 draft was extremely unorthodox, but nonetheless, this was a year that was stacked with talent, with a very close race between the top 3 picks: LaMelo Ball, James Wiseman, and Anthony Edwards. LaMelo was already a bona fide star at this point and easily the most recognizable face among the draftees. But there was another prospect that was starting to gain a lot of attention from the public and Las Vegas oddmakers, who started to quickly make Anthony Edwards the favorite for the first overall pick. And of course, that's what ended up happening, with the Warriors taking James Wiseman with the 2nd pick, and of course, LaMelo falling to the Hornets with the 3rd pick. Right away, Minnesota fell in love with their newest player. Unfortunately, with this being the peak of COVID, there was no summer league, and so the fans would have to wait a little longer than usual to see their newest player take the court. And by the time that had finally happened in December of 2020, it had been 9 months since he had last played a basketball game. Or, for Anthony Edwards, basically how long it should take somebody to send a video, as they were also forced to cancel March Madness for Ant's year at Georgia. Because of this extensive time off, when Ant hit the court for preseason, he struggled big time. However, when the regular season had arrived, the team was back to full form, as Cat had returned, and in their first game, the trio of D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Edwards, and Cat had a successful first game together, with all 3 players getting over double digits in points and the team actually walking away with the W. But unfortunately, more tragedy would strike for Cat, forcing him to miss time at the beginning of the season, and when he finally came back, the chemistry the trio had found within that first game was gone. The team was still somewhat successful in Cat's absence, but after only 3 games of him being back, the team proceeded to go on a 9-game losing streak, kinda showing a little flash of the Ewing Theory. And during the prime of his career, when he's expected to continue to take steps forward, Karl-Anthony Towns actually regressed in pretty much every category that year. However, Anthony Edwards was thriving, throwing down a highlight dunk seemingly every week, becoming one of the league's most exciting players. This trend would go on, as Anthony Edwards would continue to progress, whereas Karl-Anthony Towns would become almost stagnant, seeming more and more that the Timberwolves were becoming Ant's team. All of this would change though when the Timberwolves would quite literally become A-Rod's team, as he and Mark Lore purchased a majority share in the franchise. Usually, whenever new ownership comes in, they get a little excited and tend to jump at the very first opportunity that presents itself, like the Suns' new owner quickly picking up Durant and Bradley Beal. So when Rudy Gobert was officially put on the trade market, the Timberwolves' new owners happily threw their entire future to the Jazz by giving them 5 first-round picks, as well as Jared Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, and self-proclaimed most underrated defender in the league, Patrick Beverley. But at least now they had the shiny new face of Rudy Gobert to help sell some season tickets. Many people at the time doubted whether pairing Rudy and Cat would work or not, and through the first 21 games, the answer to that question was a resounding no, as through those games, the team would have a record of 10-11. Then once again, unfortunately, Karl-Anthony Towns would miss even more time, as he suffered a calf strain that held him out for several weeks. Through that time he was out, little changed with the team. In fact, by the time Cat had come back, the team actually had a record of 36-37. So it was almost like nothing changed at all. But actually diving into individual games, you get little flashes of greatness in the form of Naz Reid. And going into this current season, coach of the Timberwolves, Chris Finch, has actually given in to those flashes of greatness, as we've seen more and more of Naz Reid in lineups beside both Cat and Rudy. And it's had some amazing results. And now with Karl-Anthony Towns most likely out for the remainder of the season, it's going to be interesting to see how and if the Ewing effect truly plays out. Cat is an amazing talent. His skill set is undeniable, but maybe not one that this team needs at this current moment, as he has had a tendency to shoot his team out of games at points. I mean, look at his season-high 62 points against the horrid Charlotte Hornets this year. At halftime, the Timberwolves were up by 5. Somehow, as the second highest shot attempts behind Cat was Jaden McDaniels with only 6 shot attempts. But this got even worse in the second half, as Anthony Edwards would finally get some time with the ball, putting up 10 shots. Cat almost doubled him by taking 18 shot attempts, despite only making 38% of those shots. And of course, this led to an opening, and Charlotte made a comeback in the second half and beat the T-Wolves. This isn't an isolated incident, as come playoff time, it's always the same thing as well. In just his third season in the league, Cat had been named as an All-Star and to the third-team All-NBA, while averaging a 21-12 double-double for the season, with 1.6 blocks a game to add on top of that. And the team he was on was pretty good too, good enough to make it to the playoffs behind Jimmy Butler and that young star Karl-Anthony Towns. However, despite coming off an amazing regular season, Cat couldn't keep that momentum going for the playoffs, as he would go into the first 2 games of the series to drop an underwhelming 8 points in Game 1 and only 5 points in Game 2, while shooting 27% from the field over those 2 games. He would somewhat clean it up over the remaining 3 games, averaging 21 points on 49% from the field, but it was too little, too late, as the Timberwolves would go on to be eliminated by the Rockets in the first round. That would be the last time Cat would find himself in the playoffs for 5 years. When he would return, it was a slight improvement on his first playoff stint, but a very familiar theme would pop up as he struggled in the first 2 games, averaging 10 points on 29% from the field, only to figure it out again too little, too late. This brings us to now. Karl-Anthony Towns recently underwent a successful knee surgery and is expected to be out until the end of the regular season. The Timberwolves have been in a tough-fought battle for the first seed in the West all year. Now it seems that the Nuggets are starting to wake up from their championship hangover, but the Timberwolves have definitely looked like a strong threat in the West, and even though they did lose one of their star players, it might not be time to hit the panic button, as there is an argument that the subtraction of Karl-Anthony Towns could actually add a different look to the team helmed by Anthony Edwards truly breaking out as a leader, and the duo of Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert being brick walls on the defensive end. The Timberwolves have shown competitiveness and have a real edge to them. This year has made it clear that the team's ceiling as a contender isn't a factor of Cat's ceiling, but rather that of future superstar Anthony Edwards. If you made it this far, give the video a like. While you're down there, you might as well just subscribe and let us know in the comments how you feel about this take. Were we on the nose? If not, feel free to roast us in the comments. And we'll see you next week for the upload.